Welcome to Humphrey Coliseum, where we're at halftime with the number 7 ranked Lady Bulldogs of Mississippi State are defeating the other Bulldogs of Georgia. Good game out there, Steve. And we're here, though, to talk about another ranked Bulldog team, number 14 Mississippi State men. Coach Ben Howland's team coming off a disappointing SEC opener and an overtime loss at a tough South Carolina team where Bulldogs had a chance for a victory and probably should have come away with the victory, but life on the SEC road happens. Now, though, the pressure's on. Ole Miss is coming to town. Former Bulldog player Kermit Davis bringing a tough, scrappy team in, backcourt-oriented. This is the game the Bulldogs really need to get back to the play that took them to this number 14 ranking they currently have.
That's true, David, and I think there are a lot of fence sitters in the Mississippi State fan base. For some reason or another, haven't really fully invested in this men's basketball team. And losses like a South Carolina, I think, give those people pause. But a win this weekend, I think, kind of gets a lot of people back on board. Not just mention for who it is, but the fact that you can't get 0-2 in this league and kind of get behind the season and start chasing things. And the Bulldogs need a big crowd Saturday, but they also need a big showing from Coach Ben Howland's team.
And it does look like a good crowd will be here. There's some weather threat involved at the point, but still, judging by ticket sales, had to buy my wife a ticket this week, in fact. Very good sales in advance. So, and you expect Ole Miss to bring some fans as well because they're motivated now about basketball. And simply the fact that Mississippi State's welcoming one of its own. I had the fortune of watching Kermit Jr. play when he was here in the 1980s for Bob Boyd. He's building a team with his own personality, which is, like I said, tough, scrappy, really relies on guard play. Maybe not the post presence there, but it's going to be an entertaining battle when the Rebel guards and the Bulldog guards, which is this team's strength, no doubt, try to square off in what's going to be pretty much an end-to-end game one would expect.
Yeah, and Tyree and Davis are great. I mean, they finished last in the league last year, but that really wasn't indicative of the talent level they had. The season kind of got away from Andy Kennedy, and ultimately he resigned. But they do return some talent. And as you mentioned, David, very guard-oriented offense that can hit. You know, David Tyree is a guy that had the big ball game against Vanderbilt, and then last night it's Terrence Davis that has the big ball game. And so it's not just one guy that can beat you. State's going to have to bring a big effort for sure on Saturday.
Of course, Mississippi State, as we said, disappointed by South Carolina. Now, again, an SEC road loss is not a season ender by any means, and it will not hurt very much in the RPI, the SOS, or even that new mysterious net rankings that we're all trying to learn about. In fact, I believe Ole Miss now has a higher net than the Bulldogs do by a couple of points for whatever that's worth in early season. Actually, what it's worth is if the Bulldogs win the game, it's what they would call a quality one, Q1 kind of win, which, again, gets them back in a solid seeding picture for the NCAA tournament. A long ways away, a lot to take care of, but this is a team that's already thinking in those terms. So not only is the rivalry aspect big for this week, it's looking big picture for your place in the NCAA tournament as well for a team that can settle for nothing less this season.
Yeah, I think you're right, David, and it is that quadrant one opportunity, and State's got a few of those already, but you like to get some of those early in the conference slate. And listen, this Bulldog team was projected to be at least fourth best in the league. That's still very much attainable. The league has a lot of parity this year, but we believe this team with the veteran lineup, guys like Eric Holman, Quindary Witherspoon, they'll right the ship. And you can tell they were a little bit I don't know, salty may be the word after losing that ball game. It is one they let get away, but they understand protecting their home court in front of the home crowd will be priority one this weekend.
Actually, although I'm sure the coaches prefer their players stay off social media, I kind of like a little bit of fire from the players showing that they're embarrassed about the loss and maybe not fighting with the fans, but saying that, get out here, support us, cheer for us, and we'll play for you. And this team has played very, very well in many instances this season. We've seen them play great guard play. We've seen Eric Holman just having a great all-around season. Abdul-Ado needs to raise his game, be more of a factor on the offensive side, but Reggie Perry's been the guy that's been a little bit down lately, but the raw talent on this kid is just fascinating to watch. You think this is a star of the future.
Yeah, I agree, David, and I don't think he's had back-to-back bad games. It should be a good rebound game for him this weekend. But to your point about social media, David, at some point we need the adults to be adults and not get into arguments with our players either. That accomplishes nothing whatsoever. All it does is it's a bad optics situation for the program and for the fan base. So we want to avoid that at all costs, no matter how angry you are, no matter how upset you are. I can promise you are no angrier or more upset than the people that work at this university and take that basketball floor every night.
We'll have a chance to talk to Coach Howland with his regular press conference on Friday about 1:30 following a press conference by Vic Schaefer, where Robbie Falk will be reporting on what happens to that as well as the Bulldogs set up for their second SEC road trip this weekend. So that's basketball. Now, it's January, which means recruiting. Yes, December signing day has taken a lot of luster off the spring signings, but Coach Joe Moorhead has a lot of work to do because I think 14 signees in December. He could sign as many as 25, as you say. What do you really expect at this point?
Well, yeah, I think it'll be somewhere south of 25, and a lot of it depends on what happens with somebody's grad transfer. Stayed in the mix with defensive tackle out of Rice named Zach Abercrombie. Yeah, that's a new name for me, but he's a guy that was an all-conference performer at Rice. At a position of need, Mississippi State graduates and has Jeffrey Simmons leave 7 of the 8 top defensive tackles on this roster from 2018. And this is a guy that can come in and be a stopgap guy while some of these younger guys, Cameron Young, Fabian Lovett, Jaden Crumity, kind of develop. Very, very talented guys, but no experience really to this point per se. And so that's a big part of things. And we got an official visitor on campus this weekend. That's John Rice Plumlee from Oak Grove. He was the guy that kind of flirted with MSU early, committed to Georgia. His situation in Athens is kind of changing a little bit, so he's looking at some other opportunities. Mississippi State will get a visit. Miami will get a visit. Ole Miss will get a visit, and he's contemplating taking a couple more, Duke and some others kind of in the mix for that final visit. And then we'll see what happens as it gets closer to signing day. But he is a guy that's a two-sport athlete, expected to get drafted in baseball, may not sign a baseball contract, but he's a guy that could be a two-sport athlete. Really kind of plays quarterback because he is the best athlete on his team. He did mention that Andrew Briner and Jim Moorhead have talked to him about playing quarterback. And so that's rather interesting because when Dan Mullen offered him a scholarship, he offered him a scholarship as a corner, and that just really speaks to the athleticism of one Plumlee.
Had a couple of decommitments both at Mississippi State, Ole Miss, and other schools this week. And this is the week that sort of thing happens for the guys who did not sign in November. What kind of interesting developments have you seen on the recruiting front, not just here at Bulldog Country, but around the SEC?
Well, one of the things that happens with guys that commit very, very early is they kind of lose their hype and they lose their juice and kind of lose their profile in the recruiting vernacular. And so there's some of these guys, too, they go to an all-star game and they find out that these other guys are traveling, taking these great trips and having a steak dinner and dancing with a pretty girl, which is great work if you can get it. I'll leave right now. But
I never had the opportunity.
Sure, absolutely. But so sometimes those all-star games kind of put some thoughts in these kids' head to kind of, you know what, wouldn't hurt to kind of take a trip or two. So they do open it back up. And that's kind of the situation with a couple of these guys. And that's not to say they'll sign with the school they were previously committed to. But this is the time for that sort of thing to happen. And State's going to sign a good class. Could be a really good class, potentially a great class if the dominoes fall just right. But, Jerry Gnelly is a guy, longtime Mississippi State target. Kind of surprised everybody when he committed to Ole Miss. Never really expected that to stick. And, of course, there's the pro baseball element with him that we'll have to consider after the draft. But he's a guy, if he wants to come, you absolutely have to take him, and Mississippi State's got room to do so.
So recruiting news as well happening this week, basketball, and we'd be remiss not to touch on baseball. We understand that the magnificent new ballpark is taking shape right on schedule, and it'll be ready and opening by February. As we've had a stretch of good weather here, a little chilly now, but work crews have been able to get a lot done out there, so everything should be on time for the opening of the brand new Polk Stadium at Duty Noble Field. So a lot happening in Bulldog Country. Now we're going to get back to the Lady Bulldogs, watch them finish this off. And Steve, we'll be talking after Saturday's game as the Ben Howells Bulldogs host the Rebels of Ole Miss, and a game that means a lot in the long-term picture, but it always means a lot just because of who it is. So for our crew at 24/7, Gene's Page, by the way, I'm not sure he'd want us to talk about it, but let's just go ahead and send out our sympathies to Gene and the Swindoll family for the loss of his mother. And we know that he's taking care of business, and we're covering for him there, and we wish him well. And it's just, we just want to let him know that we're thinking, and send your kind thoughts his way as well. For our crew at 24/7, for Steve Robertson here at Humphrey Coliseum, this is David Murray.